Good morning. Hello. I'm so glad you're here. And obviously networking long before our networking lunch. I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for coming today. When Jamie and I first started thinking about this event, we had no idea that we would get such a rapid and enthusiastic response and participation. So thank you very much for being here. I'd also like to take a moment to thank all of the different departments at Northeastern that helped sponsor this event and put it together, including the School of Public Policy and Urban Affairs, the DeMoore McKim School of Business, the Humanities Center in the College of Social Sciences and Humanities, the Women's MBA Group, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and the Alumni Center. So obviously it's been quite a joint effort here and truly an interdisciplinary one. And actually, this event comes out of a research group that Jamie and I had formed last year with the support of the Humanities Center that spanned a range of gender issues for women in the workplace and also pulled together researchers from across the greater Boston area, as well as policymakers and practitioners to come and think about these ideas together. And that actually stemmed from a collaboration that Jamie and I formed. And I actually met Jamie for the first time at a mentoring lunch when I first joined the faculty here at Northeastern 3 years ago. And she and Kim were up at the front of the room talking about their mentoring relationship and their research. And I was so inspired, I reached out to Jamie afterwards. And ever since then, she has been a great collaborator, a wonderful mentor. I've been really lucky to have her here at Northeastern, helping me connect with all the different groups on campus and people who are doing similar work. So I very much appreciate her help. And I think we're very lucky to have her here at Northeastern and all the effort she puts into her colleagues and her students as well. So, and on top of everything, I don't know how she does it with 3 kids as well, because I feel like she's got me as a kid, she has her students as a kid, and yet she does it all with style and grace. So very lucky to have her. So we're excited today to be able to share this set of topics with an even bigger and more diverse audience. And I think part of the reason for the turnout today is not just the continued importance of these issues, but also the renewed urgency and attention that they've been receiving both nationally and locally. And even, if I could say, maybe the call to action that's inspired a lot of both women and supporters of women, not to leave the men in the room out of this, to really think about the ways that they can advance women in their businesses, in their leadership roles in the workplace, and in public policy as well, so that we can all participate successfully in the labor market. So we'd love to be able to harness the energy that is here in the room today so that we can have an even greater impact. And so we're going to be asking you to do a little work today as you sit and listen, and to be thinking about specifically, how can you take what you've learned today back to your organizations, back to your career, back to your life, possibly as a policymaker or somebody in the government, to think about how you can make a difference in the advancement of women. And we're going to give you some time today to talk about that amongst yourselves during the networking lunch, and then have some time at the end, about 15 or 20 minutes, where we can all come back as a group and kind of report out and reflect and think about what are we going to take away from this event, from the information that we've heard, to actually go and do something and make a difference. And I'll be taking notes, Jamie will be taking notes, so that we can also share these reflections on the event webpage that we'll all be sending back around to you via email, so that you can see, sort of what were the ideas that were generated by this day, either new ideas or old ways, or new ways to implement old ideas. So to keep the momentum going, I'm going to hand it over to Jamie, and she'll say a few words and then introduce our moderator.
Thank you, Alicia. By the way, Alicia failed to introduce herself, which it gives me a great opportunity to introduce her, because I think the world of Alicia. I think Northeastern is far luckier to have you than me, but we can debate that at some point. Don't Google her, because you will feel like a slacker. And she has 4 kids. And I have 3. And I used to think, I was in grad school and I was the one with 3 kids, and that was really challenging. And then you meet someone with 4 kids, and I'm not having more. So you can one-up me there on the working mother thing. That is fine with me. I'm done. But I've really enjoyed this collaboration, and this is just so exciting to get the kind of response that we had for this kind of event. I was a little nervous because the announcement went out during the Super Bowl, and I thought, oh crap, no one is going to respond to this. But by the morning, I got an email from Valerie, who helped us coordinate this, and we were sold out immediately. And we had a waiting list of 50 people. We tried to get a bigger room. So I think we're going to do this again. I'm just assuming that it's going to be very successful. So let me just say a couple things about Alicia, because I want to tell you all how amazing she is. She's been at Northeastern for, this is your third year? Third year here. She came from the Fed. She worked at the Fed for 10 years, and she's an economist with a PhD from Harvard. So she makes me feel a little insecure, but we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome today. We all feel that to some extent, no matter how successful we are. It always seems to kind of weave in. The other thing that makes me excited about this event is I'm starting to notice that there's a little bit of momentum even around campus. So for those of you who are alums or friends of the school or faculty or administration, some of you may have heard some of the things that are going on. We have a wonderful Advance program. Kathleen is here from Advance, and that's a program that has helped, initially started with the advancement of women in STEM, but it's extended to other disciplines across the college, so it really helps with faculty development, and in particular, women faculty development and mentoring. We had, back in November, how could I forget, it was November 9th, because it was the day after the election, that we had the Women Who Empower Summit. And that was a really amazing event that actually I thought was inspiring and probably an inspiration to some extent for this kind of event. That was an event that was primarily, some of you may have been there, was focused on practitioners. And actually, Kim and I were part of that event, and we thought, wow, it would be great to have some research into this discussion. So today, what we've developed is a rare opportunity that sometimes people say, us researchers, we tend to be in our little ivory tower, and we're very focused on publications, and that's very important. And we usually, when we write our academic papers, there's one little section at the end of every paper that says practical implications, because we're required to do that. But believe it or not, most of us like to talk to practitioners. We learn from practitioners. And so this is a really rare opportunity, not only to bridge research and practice, but to bridge research, practice, and policy. So we're just really excited. And we got very fortunate to have a terrific moderator, Katie Johnston, who's from the Boston Globe. Unbeknownst to Katie, she happened to email me one day while I was on the phone with Alicia, and we were talking about who we should get as a moderator, and Alicia said, it would be great to have a journalist. Journalists ask really great questions, and that's someone outside of all of our disciplines, and we don't want a boring academic, not to put down the academics in the room. And literally, as she was saying that, I got an email from Katie asking me if I knew a few good men for a story that she was writing about men who have taken flex time or reduced loads. And so I said, well, by the way, yes, I know a few good men, although they never wrote back to her, so maybe they didn't want to be written about in the story, but I think you found others. So Katie I jumped on Katie to help us with this opportunity in moderating the event. Some of you have probably read many of the stories that Katie's written in the mostly in the business section of the Boston Globe, although you probably saw this weekend there was an article about women having difficulty making ends meet in Massachusetts, and that's Katie's article, and she's written a lot about many of the issues that we were talking about today, pay equity, and paid leave. She's written about some of my work on fathers and stuff that the Center for Work and Family has done on fathers as well. So we just can't think of a better person to moderate this event. So I think that there might have been a little bit of, I don't know, something happened there. Something just clicked in the air as we were having this conversation. So we want to make this very interactive, but we also need to stay on time. So I'm going to explain how everything is going to work. I know it's going to be hard because we have a lot of people with a lot of good things to say. So let me just go over the structure of the event. We're going to have, as you know, 3 panels. The first one will be on entrepreneurship. The second one will be on leadership. And the third one will be on policy. And each panel is going to be an hour, and we're going to take 15-minute breaks in between. We're going to have, for each panel, 2 researchers. We sort of designed this so we had one researcher that was a Northeastern faculty member that was an expert in these various areas, and then an external to Northeastern. And so we're very lucky. Actually, when I look around the room, for me personally, Kim was mentioned. She's one of my mentors. And we have people like Ellen Kosek and Gary Powell who are in my world that I have always looked up to, and they're my academic rock stars. And they really are actually a lot of the researchers that are here today really do a good job, I think, bridging the research practice, and we're going to hear from Alicia in her panel about bridging research and policy, which is very important. So the panels will work as follows. We'll have the two researchers who will get up. I tried to not do PowerPoint slides, but everybody wanted some PowerPoints on the research side. So you'll see a little bit of context around what some of the key research, new research, too, that's going on in each of these domains. For the first panel, Kim will get us started, and I'll have you come sit here in a minute. And then Gary will follow, and then we'll have our the following panel, the rest of the panelists reflect on the research, and then introduce themselves and reflect on the research, and then Katie will be fielding questions to them throughout. So we're going to hold questions until the last 15 minutes or so of every panel, and then that'll be a chance for the audience to ask questions. And hopefully during our networking session, when the three panels done, we can address the question that Alicia raised and have an opportunity to get to know each other a little bit more, and maybe have some suggestions on how to do this again next time. So I would like to invite up the entrepreneurship panel, and we have your name tags sitting here, and I'll introduce Katie to the podium.
I'm used to being a short woman in the back.
All right, well, hello, everyone. I'm Katie, and I'm honored to be a part of this. I write a lot about women in work, and so it's great to meet some of these people that I talk to on the phone and pester over email, like Alicia and Jamie. And I'm really looking forward to learning about some of the research that's going to be presented, as well as hearing about what women in the trenches are experiencing, because that's a lot of what I like to write about. So without further ado, let's get the entrepreneurship panel started. And Kim, we're going to start with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all.
Oh, it's all.
You need this.
I think I can put this down for a moment. Okay, so I'm used to being a short woman in the back, so I will stand. Hopefully you can see me, because I'm 5'2" on a good day. But I'm a researcher here at Northeastern. I've been here since 2001, but I'm actually also an entrepreneur and a business owner and associated with several family businesses. But today I'm definitely going to have my entrepreneurship hat on. So let me, I don't even know if you need this. So I'm going to be giving some of the good news. I kind of end with some bad news, but then I have one of my beloved mentors and good friends, Gary Powell, who will kind of bring the sunshine back into the room. So here's just, some of the really, really good news and inspiring news about women entrepreneurs is around the globe, we are seeing more and more women take their careers into their own hands by starting their own businesses. And they're one of the fastest segments of the entrepreneurship population that's growing and starting businesses. And actually in some parts of the world, is this good? In some parts of the world, we're actually seeing women's rate of entrepreneurship on par with men. Another interesting thing about women entrepreneurs is during the last recession, while men were cutting jobs, women were actually adding jobs. And another really recent advancement we're seeing with women is women are starting to innovate at the same rate as men, and in some industries actually outpace them. So there's some really good news there, which led The Economist to say, and I love this, forget China, India, the internet, economic growth is driven by women. However, now for the cloud. Despite these gains, however, we still are seeing more and more men starting entrepreneurship and starting their own businesses. And there also is a gap, a performance gap between men and women. Multiple studies. There are very, very few studies that actually show not a gap in terms of different types of performance, growth, and so forth. Part of it is because women have such a harder time acquiring capital. And we're starting to see, too, that what happens is because they have a difficult time acquiring capital, as opposed to men, that over time their ability to grow, it gets compounded. So the gap between women's abilities to grow and perform over time compared to men, it widens and it widens, and it's really hard for them to be able to catch up. We're also even finding, banks charge women higher interest rates. And then we're also seeing some of the discrimination is a little bit more covert. So a few years ago, there were a couple of studies that showed, good news, women are getting bank loans at the same rate as men. Jamie and I then did a study. It just, being in the field, it didn't make sense. And I do some work with the Center for Women Enterprise, which is phenomenal. And it wasn't the stories we were hearing. And so we looked at, well, they might be getting loans at the same rate, but let's see what they're actually getting. And we found women were getting significantly lower dollar amounts than men. Okay, this is what this graph is showing. And then as you can see, and this is just two examples, when they did get the same amount of money as men, they had to have significantly greater signs of success. So they had to be a lot bigger in terms of number of employees to be able to get the same amount of money as men, okay? And look at past performance. Look at how performance helps men get money for their businesses, and this is women. Another thing, I won't present it here, and actually we didn't publish it yet, but really depressing finding. We also had data on the amount of money. In entrepreneurship, we call it family, friends, and fools. So we collected information on family and friends, and what they give, their close friends and family. And we found that basically no matter what, they give it to men. Women needed to show significant business success and investment in their businesses in order for their families to give money. So we're starting to see, unfortunately, some of the discrimination is a little bit more covert. So why? Why is this happening? Part of it is entrepreneurship is still seen as a male preserve. The way we describe it, captains of industry, heroes. Oh, I love the term cowboys. Cowboys, that's another one. Then we see even, and this is not just men, there are studies that look at how men and women describe entrepreneurs. And look at the terms they use. These are terms associated with masculinity, risk taker, aggressiveness. Even yesterday, I watched Good Morning America, their Deals and Steals. Who here watches that? Nobody. If you support entrepreneurship, you're probably all working. Okay. Did I mention I wasn't a morning person? Okay, so I'm drinking my coffee. I love it because they often show it's entrepreneurial businesses that they often highlight. So I always watch it. Sometimes I talk about it in my class. Yesterday, they had a whole panel of Deals and Steals on women-owned businesses. Now, other businesses, we never say male-owned businesses, men-owned businesses, and yet we have to use the label women-owned businesses, women entrepreneurs, which makes them always the other. And I even see it here at Northeastern. We have a club. Our club has won awards. It's an amazing club. We have a really hard time attracting women. I teach entrepreneurship. I teach family business. I have hardly any girls in my classes. I've actually taught classes where I haven't had one female student. I know, I saw you, wow, it's depressing. It really is depressing. And so part of it is the label, the lack of role models. Jamie mentioned the imposter syndrome when we were doing some, interviews with the Center for Women in Business and other women in family businesses. And even if we ask them, what's it like being an entrepreneur? And they'll actually say things like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I just own a business. Or I just own a store. So they're constantly, they see that term of entrepreneurship is too big, which is a bit depressing. And then finally, before I do bring some sunshine in the room through Gary, and usually I am the sunshine, so this is kind of depressing. I wore a pink suit, though. We see women they tend to set thresholds. Men generally do not. So women, when they're making decisions, naturally will say, I don't want my business getting bigger than, which kind of hurts their ability to grow. So, so now let's get some sunshine in the room. Gary?
Talk about pressure. Okay, I didn't want to go with slides, but Kim couldn't live without them, so we have slides. Okay, to put things in context, I'd like to report some of the research results that Kim and I have generated in a body of research over about 15 years. But in the research that we do, we generally have compared men as a group with women as a group and looked at different relationships of different aspects of them with experiences that they have as entrepreneurs. So we cannot speak really, it would be inappropriate for us to speak for all women or for all men for that matter. So I think one of the things about the beauty of the design of this conference this day is that if we're reporting about sex differences, women as a group, men as a group, well, the panelists will be reporting about their own stories, their own experiences, and they're all unique. And so we really can't combine any one of the sexes as a group. All right, let's start out with the notion that women and men have different family situations. So studies that we have not conducted have found, not surprisingly, that women have higher family demands and responsibilities that men do. And I'm talking about female entrepreneurs compared with male entrepreneurs. Women have a higher proportion of family members in their social networks backing them up. So they're getting a lot of support from their family, primarily from their family, where men have a lot broader basis for support. Women have spouses who have higher income. Men have spouses who have higher income than women do, which can influence the family situation and the demands to generate resources from the venture that the female entrepreneur is creating. But if we go and look at how women handle the aspect of being an entrepreneur compared with men, we find that women tend to do it their own way. They tend to create their own definition of success, and they tend to find their own way of meeting their own standards for success. So one of the first studies that Kim and I did, we called the paradox of the contented female entrepreneur. And the paradox was that although men have been reported to have greater business success on what we might call objective measures of success, and that's market share, income, number of employees, capital gains, some of the things that Kim talked about earlier in the slides that she was so in love with, that she can dig at me, I can dig at her. This is part of our relationship. So women can tend to be as satisfied with the business success that they've achieved as men are. And when we go and look at group differences, in this case, there isn't a group difference. So we're talking satisfaction with business success. We're talking about a subjective measure. We're talking about how you feel about what you have accomplished. So let's think about that for a moment. Who is the most successful person in life? Is the most successful person somebody who goes and meets objective standards that might be associated with having accomplished something in your work? Or is it something who feels good about what they accomplished? There was a old folk song that I liked that had a lyric that went, it referred to a satisfied man, but I'll call it a satisfied person. So the satisfied person is a pauper at times, except for the person with a satisfied mind. So if we look at this in non-entrepreneurial terms, if somebody is up at the top executive suite and they're working like crazy because that's the expectation, and they feel miserable about what this is doing in their lives, and we have a woman who is at a lower level who is more satisfied that the man is at a higher level, who is the more successful person? I tend to go with subjective measures of success. That's what's important to me. So this is the paradox that we see. One explanation, a negative explanation, would be that women tend to set the bar lower for themselves in terms of their own success. That they more relate, they compare themselves with other women who might be in a similar situation compared with comparing themselves with other men, and so the standard is lower. Okay, Jamie's giving me 1 minute, and I've just gotten into a first study. So I can move along.
And you thought I would be the problem.
You're right. Okay. Other things going on. I'll skip a point or two. Women gain more business performance advantages from sources of family support than men. What we found is when you look at sources of family support, how a family can help an entrepreneur can be by doing the work around the household so you can go and devote your time to the business. It can be by giving suggestions that you might incorporate into your business, or it can be by helping you to learn from your family experience how to run your business better. For example, people with a larger family, people who are parents, are more likely to be have the experience of needing to multitask and live in chaotic home environments, and this can help you to deal with your chaotic work environment. That women tend to take advantage of the sources of family support they have, and you see it in the outcomes of their business performance on those so-called objective measures, whereas men, there's no relationship. Family support does not seem to have an impact, positive or negative, on their business performance. Curious. Last point. Men and women achieve work-family balance in different ways. We looked at 3 different ways in which a family might help a woman to be better at her business. One could be that from being a family member and doing what she does there, she gets the experience, as I talked about, learns skills that are translatable to the business. So we call that instrumental family to work enrichment, our arcane sounding term. Another thing can be that the family can boost you up and boost your morale. And yes, honey, I believe you can do it. Don't give up on yourself. You've got it in you. I know you've got it in you. We call that emotional family to business support. And then a third would be that the other family member does the work around the household while you can go and devote yourself to the business. What goes on for women is that they tend to take advantage of the opportunity to enrich themselves through their family experiences and apply it to the business more than men do. And men are more likely to have somebody who'll go and do the stuff around the household, and that will help them devote more time to the business. And so the men feel like they've had a higher level of satisfaction with work-family balance when they have that kind of support around the household. The women feel they have it when they've had the enrichment. So, whoops, wrong button. So last slide. Entrepreneurship, building off what Kim said, is the new women's movement. Take advantage of it. Men have a lot to learn from what women are doing.
Well said, Gary.
Thank you.
All right, so I'd like to ask a couple questions of you guys before we move on to the rest of our panelists. And one of them, I'm wondering, Kim, you mentioned that women were the fastest growing segment of entrepreneurs. And I wonder why you think that is. Is it because the numbers are so low to begin with, or are there other reasons?
Part of it is, yeah, and now around the world, they make up about 1/4 to 1/3 of all business owners. I think part of it is, hopefully, there is so much more support for women to become entrepreneurs. It is starting to help. Also, we are a service economy. Women are starting, part-time businesses. Sometimes it can also create a stigma, like the cupcake stigma, unfortunately. But I think it's easier to start a business now than ever before, a service business where you can literally start your own business in your home. You have a phone, you have a computer. We're no longer a manufacturing society where you need millions and millions to start a business. That is definitely part of it. A lot of women, too, try to manage work and family. So we're seeing more and more women who leave corporate America with lots of skills. They still want to work, but now they want to do it for themselves on their own term. And one of the great things entrepreneurship provides, really like anything else, is you can create a business, and this is what you were saying, and women do this. They create businesses that meet their personal definitions of success. What do I want to do? And I think they recognize that, and that's one of the really key contributing factors.
That makes sense.
Building on that, women's businesses tend to be more home-based than men's are. And so this comes out of a desire to integrate your business and your family life, which women are higher in than men. It can come out of the conversion to more of a service economy where you can provide that service, manage it over the internet, provide it within your household, set aside some space within the house, et cetera.
And there also have been some role models. Like even if you watch Shark Tank and shows like that where, generally a business is started around a problem. What problem am I not finding a solution for? And let's face it, being a mom and trying to, take care of your children, we recognize problems a lot of times. And now, because, especially in America, I don't see this always in other countries, but in America where, we love to take problems into our own hands, I think women are natural problem solvers, that they say, I'm going to do this. I need to create something to help me with an issue. I'm going to the beach, and this stroller, if you ever try to use a stroller on the beach, it's impossible. So I'm going to create one that can actually go on the beach. And then they see that it works. People love it. That's another thing. A lot of women become entrepreneurs through chance. They create something for themselves, and people then say, oh my God, Alicia, I love that. Make me one. And then they see, oh, there's this opportunity.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit, because you mentioned the cupcake stigma, which I think is Jamie's term, which I love. And it's, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the perception that women go into business as a hobby or a lifestyle, making cupcakes, I'm assuming, right?
And very female type occupations.
Right, but this, I'm assuming, hurts women because they're seen as less serious. They're doing it for fun, or like, oh, I want to invent something new that will just benefit me and my friends. So is that something that plays into the challenges facing women entrepreneurs?
Yes.
All right, good, short answer.
No, but you said it so perfectly that, I think it definitely does, unfortunately. And that's why I wanted to show you those simple slides with the results. And so when banks and investors look at women, they hold them to such a higher standard. And so it's almost like they have to know that it's not going to be a part-time business. This isn't on a whim, that it's going to be a long-term commitment. They want to see things like women have put in substantial amount of their own money before they invest and things like that. So there is this, yes, that kind of hurts them.
Excuse me, Katie, I'd give a different answer. You said this hurts women. Okay, when you say it hurts women, you're making a value statement as to what's important. You're suggesting that maybe you're thinking in objective terms, it hurts women, and where they can go with their businesses and meeting those objective standards. But what if having that kind of business perfectly satisfies them?
All right, good point.
Well, and you also talked about women having lower revenues and profitability in their businesses. So why is that? Does it have to do with their challenges in getting financing at the bank, lower confidence levels?
That probably, because what happens is when men start their businesses with so much more money, and then they have an easier time gaining capital. And remember, when you're in business, usually you're gaining capital or trying to attain capital multiple times every time you're going to grow. And so what happens is over time, men's abilities to grow, it's compounded, where women are constantly being kept behind because of their lack ability to get the same level of financing. And so you really, over time, if you watch the progression, that gap widens, and it's harder and harder for women to catch up. So even the study I was talking about earlier, we collected data. We didn't study this because we didn't have enough. It's very hard to get venture capital. And the women, for example, the venture capital they reported, 25,000, which that to me, that's not even venture capital, 50,000. The men, on the other hand, the lowest amount reported was 100 grand. We were talking, 1.5 million, $2 million. So it's very, it's, so it's the amounts. And so that's why you got to be very careful when you look, especially these reports, you have to be very careful the way they're written, because, when we were first looking at this, and this is why we did the study, it was, women are getting, bank loans at the same rate as men. Oh, progress is being made. It's like, it sounded really good. And then when you looked at the numbers, it was absolutely depressing. It was so depressing, the difference. And then imagine, you own your own business, you get 25,000, she gets 250,000. That's just, what you can do with that, the employees you can hire, the marketing you can do. It's just, and again, over time, it just compounds and makes it harder and harder. And then women do set the threshold limits. They do set limits against which they want to grow. And part of it has to do with, one of the things that they really value is relationships in work. So they really want good relationships with employees. They want to be able to have a handle on it. And one of the things that gives them a lot of satisfaction owning a business is working with the customers. They love customers. So they don't want it to get so big that they lose that. They don't want to, most women, again, we're always talking statistically, don't want to be stuck in some corporate headquarters. They want to be on the floor. They want to be working with the employees and the customers, which limits your size of growth.
Well, one last thing I wanted to ask you about, Kim and Gary, is the imposter syndrome that was mentioned earlier. Yep. Okay. Last one. Quickly, do you guys want to talk about the imposter syndrome? And I'm assuming women suffer from this more than men?
Oh, it's awful. I think we first noticed it. We actually were meeting with the Center for Women in Enterprise, and we've collected data with them. And I kept using the word entrepreneur. And finally, the director of the center stopped me and she said, we can't use that term. A lot of the women have a really hard time seeing themselves, labeling themselves as entrepreneurs. They'll actually stop you and say, no, I'm a business owner. And it didn't matter how big they were. Like some of the women who go through the Center for Women in Enterprise have gotten decent venture capital, but it was just that really, and we see it in family business too. We're doing a study right now where, as women go up the ladder, and this is within their own families and are potential successors of their family firms, they don't see themselves as worthy of it, and it hurts. Do you want to add anything?
No, good job.
Okay, well, so now we want to move on to the rest of our panelists. And so if each of you could just introduce yourself and then say a little bit about what you do and how your experience relates to some of this research, and then I'll come back and ask you all questions. So,
You want me to start? Hi, I'm Nadia McKay, and I own and operate a Boston franchise of a national recruiting firm, which is called Core Team. Formerly known as MomCore, some of you may have heard of. We started about 12 years ago with a focus on placing women who had left the workforce because they couldn't get the flexibility they needed to raise families and work and so forth. Our goal was to go out and find employers who were willing to offer them professional opportunities that were more flexible. We still do that work. We're very passionate about it. But over the last 12 years, things have evolved quite a bit, and there are a lot of different people looking for flexibility for different reasons. What you're talking about, sort of loving being on the ground and working with our clients love our model, which is sort of a, owner-run. So they work with the owner, not, a group of junior recruiters, and they've now asked us to work on more substantial searches for them. So we've broadened our model, and we're now called Core Team, with MomCore being one division. I completely represent all these things that you guys just talked about. I represent those statements. It's funny, so many things are going through my head. So much has been touched on already, but I guess the biggest thing for me is I always feel like a little bit of an imposter when I sit in entrepreneurial settings because I consider the woman who started our business the entrepreneur. She was the one with this nugget of an idea. She's the one who went out, and she actually didn't get funding. It's all still private. But I own a franchise. So, I will sit in these, I belong to a group called the SheEOs, and we're all women who own or run our own business.
I love it.
And I always feel a little bit shy about it because I'm like, well, they're like, oh, I love your business. And I'm like, well, I didn't actually start it. But that said, I love your bit about who is the most successful because I always feel a little guilty that I have sort of put limits on how far I want to go. My values are very much about my family and my 2 sons and wanting to raise them and be there and be present. But I'm also, a serious businesswoman, and I spent 20 years in advertising. I was, a marketing director at Digitas, one of the largest ad agencies in town. So I'm a corporate dropout, and I had actually left the corporate world in order to take a break and spend a couple of years raising my boys until they got off into school. And this opportunity actually sort of landed in my lap due to my network. Somebody called me and said, hey, I'm doing this thing. I heard you just left Digitas. I'd love you to join us. And so I sort of went kicking and fighting, saying, no, I've got to spend a couple of years and then I'll come. But I realized also that there was an opportunity that wasn't going to be there if I waited. And I am so thrilled that they gave me the opportunity to start part-time, which I realized I could handle. And then that very quickly evolved into taking over a full-time job, and then that quickly evolved into buying my franchise. So no regrets whatsoever, but I've definitely set boundaries. I'm a solopreneur. I work by myself. I work out of my home. I value my client relationships over quantity, so I've never had designs on owning a large recruiting firm. I've always wanted to have a small firm, very high quality, very high standards, very high success rates for my clients and my candidates. And that's worked for me, and I feel happy about that. Like, to me, that's success. Sometimes I think, oh God, I should be hiring people and employing women and, enabling all these other people to do what I'm doing. But I also feel like I do my part and get people into jobs that make a difference in their lives. So, do you want to go?
I'm Sarah Merion. I founded my company EthosWell. So our mission is to educate people on complementary healthcare and increase access to chiropractors, acupuncturists, and dietitians. So complementary healthcare is any type of non-mainstream healthcare practice that you use in conjunction with your conventional healthcare. And the interesting thing about it is that most of these providers are sole practitioners. So they are entrepreneurs and small business owners in their own right, around 90% of them. And because of that and some insurance considerations, it makes for a very fragmented market. And so because of that, I decided to start this business to really increase the access around it because I thought nothing was out there. And so I sort of found an opportunity or uncovered an opportunity from a personal experience when I was looking for one of these providers myself. I've raised, by Kim's standards, a very small amount of equity financing. I'm currently trying to raise more. This is a very tender subject for me, but my biggest takeaway from entrepreneurship is it is always too early to quit. You will never, ever get money from anybody if you quit. So I hear a lot of no's, and to me, they're not necessarily no's, they're just not right now. And I continue to go back and demonstrate progress and traction and hitting milestones. And so I'm happy to talk more about that later.
Hi, I'm Evelyn E.Starr. I'm a marketing consultant, and I work with companies whose products and services are stuck in a phase very much like adolescence. So they launched, they went along fine for a while, and then they kind of level off, and the companies, often still run by the entrepreneurs who started them, are a little bewildered as to why the marketing isn't working the way it was originally. So I go in, help them look at their marketing, see what's not going right, and help them get back on their upward trajectory. So I tend to work with people who are entrepreneurs a lot of the time, but they're past that initial launch stage. I also fall under a lot of what the research says. I definitely set a threshold, and my threshold wasn't a monetary threshold or a regional threshold. It was, I'm going to be a solo professional because the time I spend working, I actually want to be doing the work. I'm a researcher and an analyst and a writer at heart. And when I'm doing things, working directly with the clients, with those things, that's when I'm happiest. I was a manager for 3 years at Dunkin' Donuts. Management is lovely, but not for me. In terms of, I definitely think, per Gary's point, that I've created my own definition of satisfaction. And what I would say to anybody starting to thinking about starting a business is, before you do anything, grab your favorite beverage, sit down, and think about what is it you want to get out of this. Which is what I did. I knew I wanted to keep myself marketable. I wanted to be available. It was a lifestyle choice, but I am a serious business person. I don't know why the words lifestyle choice and serious business person are mutually exclusive. To me, they're not. Are you serious or not? It's how you present yourself. You walk in there and you're very professional. That's all they need to know. But write down what it is that you want to get out of your business. For me, it was about continuing to earn, to put away for retirement. That's where I've really made a huge contribution. Being available to my kids, keeping myself marketable, and then, getting some new and exciting professional development. In terms of why people are starting, Katie, the businesses so much, I didn't know about MomCore. I don't know if it was around exactly what I did, but I tried full-time work with kids. I tried staying home full-time. Nobody got hurt. The best I can say. Neither one of those models worked for me. So I was sort of an accidental entrepreneur in that, I tried one thing, I tried another thing, it didn't work. I had to create something that worked for me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Susan Broman. I am a scholar, practitioner, wife, and mother. I wear a lot of different hats, and I have the honor of working with Jamie a lot, even though I never see her. I am a partner in Chrysalis Consulting, which is an organizational effectiveness and leadership consulting organization. We work with large companies and small companies. Entrepreneurial and startup endeavors are kind of our new niche. Not new, I'd say, in the past 5 years. I also consult with a group on the South Shore where I live called Mompreneurs. When I'm not doing that, I am teaching the same subjects, both here at Northeastern and also at Babson. I teach a course there also called Foundations of Management and Entrepreneurship, which is experiential, and at the MBA level, and also represent the EthosWell group over there. So I'm doing a lot of work for women entrepreneur and leadership in academic and executive consulting endeavors. I also am a student. With no irony, I have a 7 and 8-year-old, and my 7-year-old finally started full-day school. And that enabled me, first, it freed me up of lots of money because I don't have to pay for childcare. And I also have always wanted to become a full-time academic. And without a terminal degree, I can't do that. So now I am pursuing a doctorate in organizational leadership, focusing on how organizations can facilitate the reentry of mothers after a 2 or more year leave due to childcare. So let's put it all together. To put it all together, and I know you have questions, so I'll do this succinctly, but is my personal outlook on what entrepreneurship is really when you are providing resources and leadership that respond to a perceived opportunity where you generate social and or economic value. And I think that when you put that together, this is, it's a bit of the Babson, I shouldn't take all credit, that's Babson's entrepreneurial thought and action definition, but I really espouse it. And I think it works really nicely here because, truthfully, I know myself, I've leaned in, as Sheryl Sandberg might say. Like, I leaned in for a long time in my career, and I wanted to push as many things through so that I could say, this is my resume, so that I could lean out. I purposely did this. I leaned in so I could lean out because I knew someday I wanted to be a mother. And so I put full throttle up till about 32 years old when I had my first child. And now I'm enjoying the ability to say to my clients, I can't be there until X because I want to be able to get my kids on or off the bus. Or I'm taking teaching opportunities that also work well with my schedule. And it's limiting a little bit in my economic value, but at the same time, I charge more because I'm so in demand.
Yay!
So,
That's great. Well, Susan, we'll start with you. I was curious about when you're talking to small business owners, entrepreneurs, do you see, is there a difference between men and women? Is there something you can talk about that you see as something noticeably different that they do? And are there mistakes that each of them make that are different according to their gender?
yes. The first one is general and it's quick, but the first one I think is appropriate for everybody, and is that both men and women will write a business plan, but it seems to me that the men are more ready to work off of the cocktail napkin than the women. And I don't know why this is. How many here have had children? Okay, did any of you had a birthing plan? I just look at it like this to say, like, we women inherently know that things aren't going to go as they're supposed to. So I can write down exactly the 52 steps that my organization is supposed to take from the minute I ask for money to the minute I make my revenue targets. But it's not going to happen that way. And so men seem to be able to take it with them and they take it in stride and they're cool about it. Women, we can do the same thing. But for some reason, we think that because I wrote it, it's supposed to happen this way, and we get a little rattled. So I see this as the short. The longer, it takes a little bit of theory, which I won't go too far into because we have a lot more theory to go through today. But it's to say that we have one of three primary drivers that motivates us. It's achievement, affiliation, or power. And this is a lot of the stuff that you guys have already touched on too. Achievement is, we all have a to-do list. We check it off. We feel good about ourselves. I won't touch on that. But as women, and to my women clients, I see that they're very, very driven by affiliation, which is very natural because we are the nurturers, we're the caregivers, that's our role. And affiliation means not to be popular, but really to be perceived and desired and trusted, to be sought after as somebody to be in a network. And if this is my driver, then I want for my customers, for my coworkers to like me, because I think that if they like me, they'll do well by me. But again, much like that plan, I don't see it happening that way. In fact, this is business, and we all have to look at exactly what the metrics are. So if banks are saying, I need for you to show me these dollars, then that's what they need to show you. They don't need for me to say that I'm liked. And that's a challenge for women to get over. But on more than that is this driver for power, which I have to say, I just came back 2 weeks ago. I was presenting at a conference. There were 400 women. It was lawyers and their general counsel clients, and many of them were in the partner track. And we were talking about this, and I had people raise their hands, and I said, who here is driven by the one, the other? And then I got to power. Out of 400 women, 10 women rose their hand. Now, these are partners and partner tracks, and generally, these are high-performing women. But for some reason, we're trained as women that we're supposed to suppress this driver. Like, it's not supposed to be that I'm a woman. I'm supposed to want power. But if you want power, you want for your company to be successful. And thinking about what you said, like, I'm fearful of the entrepreneur label. I mean, geesh, we are entrepreneurs if that's what you're doing. So I do my very best to coach the women to say, embrace, if you want power, that's okay. Guess what? If somebody doesn't like you because you're a woman, they're not going to like you because you're a woman the minute you walk in. It's not nothing you're going to do with the way you change. So walk in, and I try to coach and say, be intentional. So intentionality, be intentional in the way that you pursue yourself, and make that business happen. Men, I don't have to coach that. Men just have that naturally.
Well, Sarah, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned raising capital, and I think you said it was a tender subject for you. So, of course, I'm going to poke at that spot. So, talk about that. Did you feel questioned or a lack of confidence in what you're doing because you're a woman? Did you ever feel held back because of your gender?
I don't think I felt held back. I don't think being a woman helps me. Sometimes it could help me because I'm in the minority, I think. But I think of all these things that we've already talked about are really true. So when I initially started my company, it was an idea, an idea that I started to really back up in research and then started to formulate how it was going to be executed. I literally had to go raise money from the get-go, and the hardest part was at that point, when you're raising money from the start, you are really selling your investors on you. That's it, because you have nothing to show. you're just selling them on, you are a good person, they like you. I was able to do that pretty well and pretty compellingly with my business opportunity. But going to the next step now, after I've gotten that small initial capital to launch my initial web application, just a bare bones MVP, I got a paid client, and I built a team with no money to pay them. So quickly they're going to leave, So I have everything ready to sort of press the gas, but I can't yet. And so, it is difficult to move forward without significant capital.
Sure, right. Well, and any of the rest of you, have you felt held back because you were a woman? Or is there some specific instance you can think of that you thought that your gender was playing a role in not helping you advance at all?
I don't think so, but I might not be in the majority. I would just say, so when I was growing up in the 70s, that's how old I am, my dad, the Title IX hadn't come out till 1972. It didn't occur to him to go and throw a ball with me. So when he would come home from work, we would talk business. He was in financing and leasing, and by the time I was 7 or 8, I could tell you what float was. I could tell you all sorts of stuff. So when I was 8 or 9 years old, I said, Dad, I'm going to be president of IBM. And my father's reaction was, great, I can't wait to retire. And it's funny, but I think that part of the reason it doesn't bother me and I don't look in the mirror and say, I'm a woman, I'm going to have greater barriers, is because not just my mother, but my father totally told me I could do anything I want in the realm of business. That kind of response without hesitation, well, I did say I'd buy him a house with a tennis court in the back, but still, he really, all the way along, I always felt complete support from him from a very young age. And so when I walked into situations where I was discriminated against as a woman, and I had that a lot in the corporate world, I knew it was them and not me.
I don't know if anyone else wants to, oh, go ahead.
I'm glad you mentioned the term discrimination because we hadn't used it yet. Like Kim was presenting a lot of results. We've heard a lot of stories. There's a matter of what people want, what their own definition of success is. But then there is gender bias and there is gender discrimination when people go after capital, when they're, being reacted to by investors and the like. And it's just a reality, and that gender discrimination is against women as a group. And so that's a setback from the onset as you seek capital and try to do the kinds of things that you do. And it's admirable that people are coming up with strategies for dealing with it. And it's joyful if you're achieving success on your own terms. But we've got to recognize the elephant in the room is gender bias, gender discrimination.
Can I add something too? Building on what Evelyn said, and if there's going to be any takeaways today that you can actually do, I saw all the mothers. So in my research on family business in particular, in the family businesses, 80% of all businesses are actually under family control. 35% of the public companies are under family control. And there is this chance at the dinner table is very common for, in a family business, they talk business, okay? They don't leave it in the business world. They bring it to the family. And it's really common, extremely common. Not only, you'd think it's in emerging markets, developing economies, but even here in America and Europe, where dads will talk to their sons about the business, bring their sons to the business meetings, and not the daughters. So there becomes this issue where, Jamie and I are doing research right now with Business Families Foundation. If anyone would like to participate, feel free to email us. But anyway, where we're finding that the women aren't even brought ever to the factories, the workplace, and they'll actually say, I never even thought it was a possibility. And even in the most egalitarian households, so there's research on this when you look at family science. So even in people who we believe in equality, think about your chores at home. Girls are still in charge of many times the kitchen, the nurturing, the babysitting, and boys get the outdoor tasks. So even if we want gender equality, it's those little things that over time tells girls your role is in the house and taking care of others, and boys, it's, you know what I mean, getting out there, you know, doing the big jobs and going to work with dad. And I was lucky enough to have a father too who actually spoke business with me. I was supposed to be his heir. Thank God I'm not, though. We could never work side by side. It would kill our relationship. But, you know what I mean, he's a lawyer. We always spoke law, spoke business, and it made me think I could be a professor. So that's something, if you take anything away today, start thinking about how you're raising your girls and your boys and making sure you talk business with them. If you have a business, introduce them to it. You know, those, you don't hear about it as much, the Bring Your Daughters to Work Day. Remember those? Like, it's like, you
Doesn't exist anymore? Oh, yeah, right. Take your kids. Yeah.
You know what I mean? But it's you don't really hear about it, but there was a nice trend. We should almost bring that back. But there are things you can do today that can hopefully, you'll end up with a lovely Evelyn. A nice role model.
Well, Nadia, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned SheEOs. So I wanted to hear more about that and, you know, how the group came about and if you think this is a necessary thing for women to belong to some of these groups that give them extra support like that.
Yeah, so the SheEOs is this great networking group. It was started by a woman named Bettina Hein, who's actually Swiss, and she was the founder of, you may have heard of Pixability, which is a video production company in Boston. And it's like one of the fastest growing businesses in Boston. And it started out, you know, very small, and it's mushrooming because it's predominantly women who own their own technology businesses. But we've started to, you know, people like me who, you know, entrepreneur or whatever.
Don't put air quotes
And
around.
we get together on a monthly.
No quotes.
Yeah. Monthly, we have a breakfast. Monthly, we have a lunch, and then quarterly, we have a dinner. And they touch on all kinds of subjects, some of which are relevant to some of them and not to others. So things like raising funds, things like marketing, or yeah, I can definitely hook you guys up. And I think it's one example of what, to me, Boston feels really, right now, I'm sort of perceiving Boston as a very supportive, innovation, you know, it's an innovative city. People are raising women up. I think there are a lot of, I keep hearing about places where, you know, there's special places people can go for incubating sessions, and, you know, the Golden Seeds, who predominantly invest in women-owned companies. I feel like there is this sort of underground movement to support women entrepreneurs in Boston. And maybe just because I get exposed to it through the SheEOs, but I think it's wonderful to surround yourself with other like-minded professionals who have similar challenges in different industries to, you know, we all sort of give each other advice, and we can talk about what are our biggest challenges in growing our businesses and where do we go to hire people, and it's a really great thing. Yeah.
I have to call them for a story. Well, so now we want to open it up for questions from the audience in our remaining minutes. So you guys going to walk the mic around, or get a little exercise today?
Good morning. I'm Sheila Puffer, a faculty member in the business school here. I'm looking at your statistic there. 24% of the largest family firms are led by a female CEO. First of all, how many is largest family firms? And 24% of what? And secondly, is that, you know, it's 10 times more than you see in the Fortune 1000, but is that because the women take over from the men, if they're the spouse or the daughter?
I wish. All right, so that was an Ernst & Young study, and remember I did say you always have to kind of be a little careful with the numbers. This was actually a global study. So it was done with Ernst & Young, and they looked at the largest 25 predominantly privately owned family businesses in multiple different countries. And so some countries had better rates than others. More and more women are starting family businesses. That's a big issue. That's a lot of it. And probably part of it is because of some of the research we showed where women, possibly it's because they have a hard time getting resources. So what do? They turn to their families, they hire family members. There's research not by us, but by someone else that showed that women with family employees actually grow faster, have stronger performance. There is there's some good news there. Also, some countries, especially emerging markets, the rate of women entrepreneurs, the Sub-Sahara, Latin America, is stronger than women's. So more women are starting the businesses, and almost by default, they're all family businesses, okay? But we are still finding, for example, there was a study just recently out of the UK and France, and 75% of the successors are still chosen by primogeniture, meaning the oldest born male. In Germany, there was another, these are all very recent studies, like the last 2-3 years, and they found that the only time a woman was a successor was, and Germany's amazing with its family businesses. They've made this whole upper middle class, and they really control the economy, and even higher class, upper class. They found that the only time women take over is when there is no male, or the male is incredibly incapacitated. She has to have extremely stronger education and experience skills. So again, there's a little bit of the good news, bad news, but Jamie and I are actually doing a study right now looking at women's roles in family businesses. And just one really small thing, I have data out of Sweden. The entire population of Sweden, okay, hold on to your seats. And we found that women in family businesses, this is their own families, were significantly underpaying them, controlling for their human capital, their education, in compared to their male family members. So there, I know that in Sweden. I presented this in several places, and people will be like, "Did you say Sweden? Did you say Sweden?" I said Sweden. I'm so sorry, I said Sweden. So but we're making progress. We are. It used to be years ago, and there's still some old-fashioned businesses. Unfortunately, I do a lot in Europe where women are still kept out. We're seeing that less and less, where now women are brought into the family business, and a lot of women are starting them. So there's always this kind of like, things are getting better, but we have some of these old traditions that, we need to get through. Good question, Sheila. I know, sorry I didn't have a better answer. I was trying to hide it.
Hi, Kiara Wagoner. I work in communications for a education philanthropy. Wondering, you talked a lot about the differences between male and female entrepreneurs, but wondering about any differences for female entrepreneurs of color, and if any of that came up in your research.
So hard to get that data. If you could get us that data, usually in our research, we haven't even had enough. We would have loved to.
There isn't much on the research side. Just even the field of gender and entrepreneurship is one that is not that ancient, and it's growing.
No.
It needs to expand beyond just a focus on gender to include race, ethnicity, all the other demographic characteristics that might intersect with gender to have an influence. So I wish I had research results to report to you. That's an area that, and it's not because it isn't an important area, it's because the work hasn't been done yet.
Getting the data.
We need to get to work.
We've got a question over here.
Hi, my name's Nina Salvaggio. I'm in the throes of starting a consulting firm and completely scared about it all. But I'm fascinated by the subjective definition of success. And it seems really loaded with socialization. Like women, we lower our standards for what it means to be successful. Like that's enough. Well, that's good enough. Versus actually meeting objective levels of success. Like it feels like we're socialized to expect more or be happy with less versus really being happy or feeling successful because we achieved X by our own definition.
Well, I'll react to that. there are gender roles, there's gender socialization, as you say, we all know what it is. We know how boys traditionally have been brought up. We all know how girls have traditionally been brought up. Girls with a focus on relationship, boys with a focus on status and power, or a focus on affiliation, as you said before. But then, so there's how you've been socialized, but you get to adulthood and, okay, how are you going to take things from this point? I think that, so where does this emphasis, where does this not being dissatisfied with lower objective success come from? Does it come from the socialization? And so people really aren't thinking for themselves, this is just how they were brought up to think? Or does it come from their making a choice as to what's important to them? I think what's important is that what's desirable is that people make choices about what's important to them. And I think it's desirable that people shrug off, and I know it's an impossible task, and if I were to raise this in a conference of feminist researchers, I would be beat over the head as an ignorant male, which I probably am. But aside from that, as best as people can, they need to shrug off the mandates of traditional gender roles. And this applies to women, and this also applies to men. And make decisions for yourself as to who you want to be and then what you need to do to get there.
Can I add something, too, that makes men look really bad? So we had this really strange result in doing this. And my husband, who owns 2 businesses, ended up helping us. He says, you go talk about entrepreneurship while I do it. So we had this strange result that was the more success, objective success, the men achieved in terms of growth and sales, profits, they were not attaining higher satisfaction. And so I asked my husband, what is going on here? And even the reviewers, they're never satisfied. The more they get, you probably know men like this, and even some women. Of course, we're making generalizations here, but it's very common. The more success men get in objective terms, they honestly are never satisfied. It's like, once he explained it and, we discussed it, looked into it more, whereas women don't define themselves based on money, a lot of them, or sales. They look at how good are my relationships, or they're more likely to look at market share. Like, I'm growing in terms of the number of my customers. I'm really satisfying my customers. So it's, it's just a different thing. But I thought there's some bad news for men. They're never happy.
By the way,
can I just add, but women, like all the panelists, or a great majority of the panelists, were talking about how they have to balance being a mother and wanting to spend quality time with their children, being successful and but how often, statistically, do you hear men say when they're thinking about becoming a partner or getting a promotion, well, if women statistically more often than not will say, oh, but I'm going to have a kid in 4 years, do I really want to be on the partner track? And they limit their own success and achievement because they know someday I'm going to have a family. Versus men who are 30 and on the partner track aren't thinking, well, in 3 years we're going to start to try and have a baby, therefore I should go for the next piece in my career.
I think we're socialized to figure out that being a good mom, or being a bad mom, carries heavy stigma, whereas being a dad and not being as involved with your children doesn't carry that stigma. So moms, if they want to be emotionally or intellectually stimulated, they also have to factor in taking care of their families and kids in ways that men don't. And so your definition of success includes both those things, whereas men don't have to factor in that emotional piece.
I'm going to talk about that in the next panel, so I even have a bad mom slide, so my favorite movie.
Can I just say one other thing to address what you just said there? I'd just like to let everybody know that I started my business 2 months pregnant with my second child, and the first child was 19 months old, and I intended to just network until I had the baby, but I got a client in my 8th month. Okay? So, just because other people don't think you should be doing that doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing that, okay? And putting your kids in daycare while you're networking, even if you don't have paying work, you cannot network when you have a 2-year-old running around. You just can't. And I had a lot of raised eyebrows. wow, well, why are you paying for daycare when you don't have a paycheck yet? Like, this is how you start a business. So you have to kind of, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg says, become a little deaf.
We're actually running out of time, so I just want to thank our panel. Thank you, Katie. Excellent. I want to just call out Sarah. Sarah was a student of mine now a long time ago. And you're doing kick-ass with your business, and I hope there's some people in the room that want to invest because it sounds like a great opportunity. So thank you again, everyone, for your insights. I saw there were a few more hands with questions, so during the 15-minute break, maybe a 14-minute break, if you want to ask those questions, or we'll have time during the networking to do that. So take your bio breaks, and we'll start up again in about 14 minutes.